Hey, good morning, everybody. Super excited to be here today. And we just talk about life, business, entrepreneurship, kids, marriage, how these are all integrated, whether we want them to be or not. And they actually all affect our business. I mean, we just had this conversation the other day. Your personal life affects your business, and business, even if you're an employee, business affects your personal life. But we are jumping on, and we don't really have a set topic for today. For some of you guys, do we have a set topic?
I was gonna say we did that by design.
Yeah.
Set topic.
Bring your questions. We're monitoring live, so bring your questions. We're happy to answer them, and we can just chit chat. I wanted to share with you guys, like, I had the absolute best, most amazing, transformational week last week. Absolutely amazing. I went through BUDS training, which is the Navy SEALs something. Oh, I can't even remember. It's like underground explosive something training. I don't know. It's a Navy SEALs training. I went through it last week in San Diego. And my God, I learned so much. I did it on my birthday. It was so hard. I literally forgot that day was my birthday because at the end someone was like, how's your birthday going? I'm like, I literally didn't remember. It was so physically like hard. But man, it taught me a lot of things. Like, it doesn't matter your age because I outpaced some of the younger people.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter your gender because I outpaced some of the guys that were younger than me as well. It was all about mindset. It was mindset over like anything else. Mindset over exhaustion, how physically tired you were, how you hurt. It was all mindset, and it was a great experience. And it was physically like I think I hurt for days after that.
Yeah, there's usually I always call it like the 2-day kickback. Whenever you do something extreme or hard, your body's not used to it. It always takes 2 days before it just really hits you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was incredible to go through that. And it's funny because when we got done, I was sitting on the bus next to a friend, Caden. He owns a cleaning software for commercial cleaning. And when we were going, we were scared. We were like, oh my God, how hard is this going to be? Like, I'm not sure. When we got back on the bus, we actually expected it to be like we expected them to be meaner. Because we had like built it up in our head. So we expected them to be meaner. And we got on there and like, I mean, they were pretty mean and they yelled at us. And no matter what you said, it wasn't the right answer. And you had to go back. Like, they kept saying, go to the surf. And you had to go and dunk in the water in the ocean. And it was freezing and you're full of sand and they time you. And if you don't make it back in time, like, you got to go back to the surf and you're only as good as your entire team. And you had to communicate and there were captains. I mean, it was amazing to watch, but it also was amazing to see that, like, is that what your team feels like sometimes? Or if they don't have a great leader, are they running back to the surf every time? Like, to it made cold plunging look like a freaking piece of cake. I mean, I've done cold plunges. This was like elementary compared to the difficulty of like sitting in a cold plunge.
Yeah.
But it was absolutely, it was amazing. It was fun. It was hard. At times you wanted to give up and you couldn't, because if you did, you hurt the team.
Yeah. And I did a different kind of BUDS training at home with Yaya.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, she finally, we finished her very last cookie booth for the season. Yesterday, she sold out every single one of her cookies.
We are out of cookies.
So we are good to go. Yeah.
How many did she sell? Do you know yet?
I don't. She was asking me earlier today. I'm like, I got to count. I don't know right now. But I think it's close to about 2,000 or so. This year was a little bit more tricky because prices went up, and just a little bit of a kick with whatever buzz they had on blogs and this and that.
Yeah, about the Girl Scout cookies. And then we also have a personal friction point with the Girl Scout cookies, not Girl Scouts.
Yeah.
We don't eat sugar. So it's like it's hard to push a product that you don't even eat yourself.
Yeah.
So last year I didn't eat one Girl Scout cookie, and I didn't eat one Girl Scout cookie this year. Now, Chris, it was different for you last year.
Last year I supported the troops. So Yeah, let's say lots of Thin Mints and lots of regret after eating too many in one time. But no, it was great. Had some people last minute that we know text us and say, "Hey, I want 15 or 20 boxes of cookies. Can we meet?" Yeah, absolutely. So
lots of things going on this last weekend. But after that weekend of the Budge training, that was like, it goes to show you the mindset and emotional strength that you either have or you don't have. And then when something bad happens in business, like, it doesn't compare to like the emotional and physical toll they put you through over here. Then when something happens, you're just kind of like, yeah, no problem. At least I don't have to dunk in like 30 or 40 degree water and run to the shore. It felt like a football length away, and the tide was going out. So every time they made us run back to the water and you had to submerge in the water, it felt like it was getting like further and further and further away. I was like, oh my God. So
but you still had to keep the same time.
We had to keep the same time, man, the same time. And it was fun, and it created for some great memories. And then the next day I met the most amazing Chinese doctor, and he took us through an experience like no experience I've ever been through, as far as personal mastery of your emotions and your organs and your body. And then we went on a very, very surreal spiritual breathwork journey that was just absolutely amazing. So I had a great weekend, even though I wasn't able to spend it with you guys because it was my birthday.
Yeah.
But I spent it with my software family. So it was great. And then,
well, I wanted to circle back to, I'm a little bit envious of you in just being able to have such an extreme experiences that really kind of, steal your mindset, that just lock you in. And so I love that you can do those. And I'm eager to get those for myself as well. Those heavy experiences.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I did when the Budge training, you probably could not have to do.
Yeah.
I don't know if you should be jealous of that one. I hurt for days. But the one with, I think is it Preston? Dr. Preston, Kevin Preston. That one was so amazing and transformational. First thing I did was ask him, I'm like, do you do this anywhere else? Like, can I bring my husband? It was amazing. And, I love leading by example.
Yep.
And then, because I don't know, would you have done breath work prior to learning about it? So a lot of people are skeptical about breath work, especially. Go ahead.
You said prior to learning about it?
Prior to like me experiencing it, was it something that like you sought out? It wasn't something I sought out. I didn't even understand it.
I'm not going to say I sought it out, but I was really curious about learning about it. And so I understand the power behind it. So I think that, yes, I would have probably sought it out or did it, but it was just, there's some kind of magic behind, breath work, or even the idea of how you control your body's like internal mechanisms, with breathing and stuff is like, and you see this in every kind of meditation, every kind of practice or exercise, is when you're looking to achieve a level of focus or a level of like next level, there is always some element of breathing, breath work, control, focus. Control. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what attracts me is, the idea of breath work and Reiki and Reiki breathing and things like that. Absolutely. I would have probably like a year or two ago, maybe been a little bit hesitant because I'm not sure how this relates. But
yeah,
after I thought about it, every single thing, every powerful movement has something to do with a sense of control with the way that your body flows and works. And I really, really like that idea, especially with breath, like breathing, because this is something that I taught Yaya and then I practice myself, not necessarily breath work, but in controlling your breathing, how you really help to maintain your own like stability internally. I used to rock climb a lot. I need to get back into it, but just the element of these extreme acts, rock climbing by nature, I am terrified of heights, but rock climbing itself, as I learned through some motions, some practices, and actually like going up with more difficult routes, you have to do different techniques to keep yourself on the wall without slipping off. And there's different kinds of climbing, different kinds of you have dynamic rope, you have static rope. Basically, it depends on the feel and the flow of how secure you feel on the rock. But a massive part of this was in controlling fear, because if you had fear, and I think this goes in with what you're doing as well, is being able to control or adapt to that fear, because the second that you start to internalize it, that's when you start to have shaky hands. That's when you start to have sweaty palms. And you all know with climbing is that if your hands are sweaty, you're going to slip, especially when your holds get much smaller. So the magic was around finding a way to control, one is your movements in extreme situations, and two is control breathing and the way that your body reacts. And so I was huge on breath work with rock climbing, because you had to keep a steady breath and a very, very deep, very long cycle to your breath to be able to, one is maintain the level of energy, have the oxygen flowing through your body, but also still not have this very sudden jolt, because if you do on very small holds, you slip off very easily. And so for me, for climbing, breathwork was huge. I then started to practice that and relate it to personal in terms of controlling emotional situations or controlling extreme environments. Now Yaya practices that as well in terms of like slow, deep breaths and breathing back out. When she's nervous, we've learned through this cookie season as well, is she went and stood up in front of groups of like 30 people to talk about certain things, to talk about Girl Scouts, let's just say, as an example. She stood up on a chair, she had a microphone. But before she did it, without me even saying anything, is she took a few moments and just kind of like breathed in really deep and just calmly breathed back out. And then she went and she grabbed the mic and she was able to talk normally and openly about what she was going to talk about. And so I think that this is massive that we take for granted, even in everyday situations. And for me also, it was how it applied to work and business is, and I heard this from people that we had to fire because I had to jump on Zoom meetings, but from people that I had to let go because they just weren't the right fit. This happened a handful of times now. I've really gotten this under my belt. But one of the first times I remember is I jumped on a call and I talked with somebody about this wasn't going to be the right fit, and we had to let them go. But the way that I approached the situation, the way that I worked through it myself, was with a calm mindset, just steady breath, really kind of pulling it in. After everything was said and done, and I delivered the message, collected their feedback calmly, they said, "I don't know how you're so calm." Like, and they honestly, they looked at me in a different light. They actually respected me a lot more after letting them go and after hearing the message of the reasons why, and honestly setting them free if it wasn't something that they truly were fired up about. But breath work and staying calm, I think I actually built a better relationship for them in that meeting of letting them go than I had previously with them actually in the company. I just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah. And for all my business owners out there watching, I made Chris do these hard things, like letting people go on purpose. Why? I could have stepped in and done it. But why? Because we need to do hard things on purpose. I knew he could do them, but he didn't want to do them. And so by saying, "Hey, I need you to do this. I know you can do it." It's just like saying doing the budge training or rappelling off a wall or doing scary things. It's making, having him do them on purpose to build up that fear, and how do you work through it each time. So like if you have someone in the company that's like they're growing, they're aspiring, you want them to take more on, you have to make them do hard things. Like you have to say, "Hey, I need you to do this. I know you don't want to. It's actually not even your place, probably, as in like leadership or the way it works, but I need you to take care of this because it's going to build you up. It's going to, if you can have this difficult conversation, if you can do these things, it's just going to make you grow as a person." And so, yeah, poor Chris. Sorry.
But that's
but also, you did a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's also the reason why I make it a pattern of saying yes in everything that comes my way.
Yeah. I mean, you have to do hard things on purpose. It's hard things on purpose. It's a part of your brain. It's part of your emotional system, that if you do these hard things on purpose, when hard things happen, they're so much easier. Like they're so much easier. Like that's why the group I'm in, they made us go through budge training. Like I would never in a million years think about, I should do this. And then like every quarter we meet and they make us do hard things on purpose. But when it's on purpose, we can kind of control our emotions a little bit better. because we know we're in control, but we're still scared or fearing the unknown. Versus like if we're only facing the hard things when we don't have control, it's overwhelming and it's exhausting. It's a constant like just feeling of like burnout or chaos. I have so many business owners I've coached over the last like month. They're stuck right now. They're like stuck. And there's a part of me, and I say this to all of them, there's not another process or marketing thing or system or software that you could go buy right now to get you unstuck. It's all like you right now. Like this is the personal mastery, the self-work that we don't want to do. And it's one of those things is doing hard things on purpose so that when it's hard in the business, you're just like, oh, yeah, it doesn't keep you up. You can control your breathing. You can control your emotions. Because if we don't do the hard things on purpose, we will get physically and emotionally drained, like exhausted, to where we don't even like want to be involved in the company. Like we don't even want to do our own job. And so those hard things on purpose are really, really great like exercises to do. One of my EO friends says he does them like once a quarter on purpose, do like hard things. So I think it's fun, and it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs need to actually add into growth.
Yeah. And I think it's because people, I'm sure there are like, I do hard things. I have a business. I run through chaos every single day, but it's to the extent of controlled chaos to where you're coming into certain situations with a prepared mind to know that this is going to be hard, or I'm expecting to look for something in this to control or not control. So like with the action of rock climbing is you're going in with the expectation that this is going to be hard and that it will not go right the first time, but you're keeping pace. We got our daughter here in the background making tons of noise.
Making noise.
But yeah, I think it's because it's much different when you're in the day-to-day because you're not as intentional. You can't be as focused with the hard things that happen throughout the day-to-day because you're not intentionally there with a calm mind because you're trying to put out fires.
All I got to say is you just let the burn, like let it burn. Like we focus on so much day-to-day and like putting all the fires in the chaos. Just let it burn. Like let it burn. What is the worst thing that would happen if you just let it burn? What, maybe we get a bad review? Like maybe we lose a customer? But the amount of emotional investment we have in trying to keep up with the chaos, just let the crap burn down.
Yeah. Because
then you could have some time back to go work on preventing it from catching on fire again. But if we're always putting out the fires, we're always just going to keep putting out fires. And you have to think, what's the worst thing that would happen? I'm sorry, I get very emotional with the chaos because business owners let their companies control their emotional and mental state. You let the customers do it too, and the employees do it too. You need to have control of your mental state. You're going to get to a point to where that you don't care if they call on you or not. And then then now it's time to move on. Right? Toastmasters is great if that scares you, but eventually like you're going to get to a point to where like, call on me. I have stuff to share. And then you know what? I've graduated on, I've evolved. It's time for a new thing. And then what's the biggest mistake you see service-based business owners make? So many. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I want you to go first, but on the level of transparency, we'll talk about that here in a second.
Yeah, it's probably too many to list all on this. It depends on where you're at too, like what revenue size, where you're at professionally, personally, family, marriage. But I think one of the biggest mistakes, there's a handful. One is they think they can do everything themselves, right? Where we suck at asking for help. We think that's a sign of weakness. We think we can do everything ourselves. We don't focus on ourselves and our marriage. Because let me tell you what, if you have a chaotic business, you cannot come home to chaos. You can't. You have to have that foundation that supports you in business, and that is your family and your life.
Which is what we talked about with psychological safety.
Yeah. And we talked about that in another podcast. So it's not all about the business. It's about you first, then your family, my marriage, then my kids, then my business, right? Because again, it's that whole saying, you can't pour from an empty cup. We work ourselves to burnout. And then the last one I would say is we don't invest in ourselves enough. And then when we do, we don't realize that maybe we've evolved, we've outgrown what we've invested in and move on to the next hard thing. we sit in rooms where we're comfy and we're comfortable. But just like with Toastmasters, once I get comfortable doing this, I need to move on to the next thing. Like, what scares the bejesus out of me to keep up leveling me in the room that I'm in, versus like, am I staying because I'm comfortable? Growth does not come from comfort. And I think a lot of service-based business owners, I'll be honest, growth has very little to do with the actual service, right? We all know how to clean windows, power wash. Once we have a training, you can just keep repeating, you can keep hiring. It has a lot to do with culture and a lot to do with personal mastery. And you can't have a great culture in business if you don't even understand yourself. If you're not even honest with your own self and you don't know how to communicate a vision and what you want, there is no way you can build a company. Like, there's no way you're going to have culture and a cult-like following of employees.
Yeah. And to that point, because culture is a very subjective word, but what I was going to say was the biggest mistake that I see. And again, I'm an entrepreneur, so I don't actually own a company per se, but being able to run a few companies that we have under our belt is the level of transparency that you deliver. And I mean in like the smallest things. And we came across this the other day, is getting people to buy in to the idea of what you're doing to the fullest degree.
We talked about that this morning when Marcy was like, I need the logo.
But what I mean is like, and we'll talk about that in here in a second,
yeah.
but getting people to buy in like to the highest degree, and I'll be honest with you, I don't really relate it to culture. It's not really culture, but it's the transparency built around the culture in how you decide to deliver information or how you choose to withhold information is, I think, the biggest failure, the biggest mistakes that that businesses make. Because again, it's all about perception, it's all about feeling, it's all about people. And when you talk about withholding information, people get a sense of that, regardless of what it is.
Yeah, it's lack of trust.
It's
just part of it.
Right. But trust isn't specifically that. It goes in with either some level of insecurity, doubt. And this again goes in with the idea of what we talked about is energy only has two forms, either constructive or destructive. But then there's the middle grounds of energy leaking. And that's where things like insecurity, hesitation lie, that really makes things a murky middle and ends up hurting you in the end. But when you withhold information, there's this feeling that happens that you can't really pinpoint or touch. When you withhold information, people have a sense of it. And every time that you do that, you lose buy-in, you lose trust, you actually take an emotional withdrawal out of their bank account in very little increments.
So this is something we talk about all the time in WootRecruit. This is Chris's saying, like, emotional bank account, and when are you withdrawing and when are you depositing?
And so every time you break that element of trust, meaning that you intentionally decide to withhold information from somebody, is the moment that you start to take deposits, take withdrawals from that emotional bank account, and you're not even realizing it. And now there's the other person on the other side, but they just get a sense or a feeling that keeps diminishing in terms of how they see you, how they perceive the company. And that really gets into the idea of narcissism, where you start stacking on these mistruths or these false expectations, and it starts to stack up to where it gets out of control. And then you realize, oh my gosh, so-and-so is quitting and stealing half my customers, or this and that, It's because it stacks up over time, and not having full alignment, transparency, everything that you're trying to, I guess, lock in with that 1LD lifestyle.
So, and we're going to go to one layer deep, right? One layer deep. It's the action before the result. And we're like book prepping. Libby, I'm going into like book prepping mode. Oh my God. And we're having to media train and get things ready. And I have to get really good at explaining things as far as like, what is 1LD? And I told Chris, like, 1LD is one layer deep. It's the title of the book that we're coming out with. Not the kids' book, it's the business book. It's the life book. It's focused on business, but it applies to life. And one layer deep, it's so transformational, the thought process around it. And I told Chris the other day, I said, this one layer deep, if you're not doing this, you're exhausted because you can't remember the information that you withheld, that you shared, Did you over exaggerate? Did we under exaggerate? Did I make sure I don't show this person the financials, or they can't see this, or don't show my cleaning technicians what we charge? And it's like, it's exhausting. And One Layer Deep has to go into business, family, personal, and it's a level of transparency that creates simplicity in your life. And when you were talking about that, it reminded me that morning when we were doing our morning date, and I said, One Layer Deep, because of the way I run the businesses and the way we share things, it's the opposite of exhausting. I'm not tired. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't share this or that. I'm asking the employees, send me the Stripe report, send me the P&L, send me this, send me that, because there's nothing that's off limits for anyone. And it's so freeing to think of that mindset around, if you're not and it takes time. I didn't wake up and say, I'm going to share everything with everybody. It's a level of confidence that I had to have in myself and the businesses and in our team. And to Richard's question, like, what's the one thing that you think you're missing, or what's the service-based business owners are doing? It is the ability to build great teams, like, is one huge thing. I think as an entrepreneur, we lack trust because we've been burned so many times. And that goes back to us doing everything and us taking on too much and us not focusing on ourselves, because then we don't have time. But it's, how do I build a great team with transparency and trust and raise them up so I don't have to do it anymore? Like, if you're a true entrepreneur, you cannot work in the day-to-day. That's why you're burnt out. But we don't know how to hand it off and delegate. And I posted yesterday, when I posted the saying, the saying was, if your systems, or wait, if maintaining it is a struggle, the system is broken. It's broken. And, I think that this is one thing that we struggle with as an entrepreneur, is like, how do you make this all cohesive, right? How do I trust my team? How do I do self-work? Because if you have a great team, you have no issues with quality, with customer success, with, you have no issues. Like, there's some expectations that can't be met. That's normal. But you don't have like a quality issue when you've built a team that will follow you to the ends of the earth. Do they miss the top of the refrigerator? Yeah, every once in a while, but they don't do it on purpose. And then it fixes so many other things. And this morning we had a talk. I said, Marcy was over yesterday, helps with the Fort Myers location. She runs the technicians. And she came over yesterday to train our daughter, our 6-year-old, how to clean, because we're going to do a Kids That Clean series. And I was talking to her, and I was like, oh yeah, like, we're going to take the whole Woot Recruit team to Mexico City to meet. We've never met. So I own a home service business and I own 2 softwares. The Woot Recruit team has never met in person. We are totally a 100% remote company. And we're meeting for the first time. Together in person. And I told Marcy, and she works and organize it. And I said, I'm leaving on this date to go to Mexico to meet the Woot Recruit team. And she's like, oh my gosh, I need to make the swag. We have our own embroidery machine, and she works for Organize It. But she's like, you got to get me the logos. I got to get this done for you before you leave, so that the Woot Recruit team can get their swag. Like, we want to get them swag. Go ahead.
And just for clarity, there has never been any overlap from the Organize It team into Woot Recruit prior to this point?
No, but they know, because I share, I'm open. They see this, like, and she's like, oh, I want to make sure that I get it done for them so that you can take it. That is like the ultimate goal, is that your employees, your team is on board no matter what you're doing, no matter if you open another company. Because when I first started this, there was a part of me that was embarrassed that, like, I left Organize It to go focus on Woot Recruit to build that. And I was almost like feeling shameful that I wasn't over there anymore. And I have since learned that was my feelings, not theirs. What's the big mistake? And I think it's building great teams, but we can't build great teams until we build ourselves, because we can buy, like, hey, like, I need a solution for training, or I need a CRM. Like, we can buy those things. I've met multi-millionaires that didn't have a freaking SOP or a doc or a process. They didn't even know their numbers, but they were great at communicating. They were open, they were honest, and they could build a team. Man, they could build a team. And then meanwhile, like, we're over here trying to, like, make it more complicated, which creates resistance, which stalls growth.
Can you give an example of overcomplicating? And I wanted to circle back real quick on that, because you talked about and again, the words intention, one layer deep. And again, one layer deep isn't just a systems based concept. It's actually a mindset framework. And it's all about getting it to the action before the result. And this goes in with mindset as well. And how you communicate is being able to have that extremely fast transfer of your intention to somebody else. It has to be one layer deep. It has to be extremely simple without overcomplicating it. And the best way that I can explain this, there's a great book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, I think. But he has a lot of different concepts in there. But one of them is, we've heard it before. It's like instinct versus thinking. It's the high road versus the low road. It's habit. It's the low road being basically what is natural to you versus having to pause, process information, and deliver it. That is when things slow down, because it's like as if you had to take a detour on a road. You're on the highway, again, high road, low road. You're on the highway, you're driving 70 miles per hour in a straight direction. But if you have to go off the exit and go wait at a stoplight and then get back on the exit and merge, think about how much time you're wasting as opposed to just staying on that gosh darn freeway.
Interstate.
80
miles an hour in Oklahoma.
Because you have to
75.
Yeah, but because you have to think about, hold on, there's an exit coming up. Let me slow down. Let me turn. Let me go ahead, and there's a stoplight. It's red. Let me stop here. Let me wait a few seconds. Let me go. That's the same thing that you're doing when you intentionally withdraw information, and then you have to keep track of what information you're withdrawing or withholding, because you're trying not to hurt somebody's feelings.
Yes.
But the thing is that it's not somebody else's feelings that you're hurting. It's your perception of their feelings. And the fact that you're caring too much about their feelings as opposed to the bigger picture when you're doing that. What I realized with myself, and this is something that I've been doing a lot of self-work with myself, is my biggest self-sabotage was caring too much, or the idea of what I thought people thought about me. I've said this before. It's not what they actually think. It's the idea of what I thought they thought about me.
That's a lot of thinking. That's exhausting right now.
It's like taking 4 exits in one.
I'm tired just hearing him say that.
It's like taking 4 exits in one, and oh my God, it was slowing me down, and it was causing me a lot of stress and anxiety because I had to take the high road, and I had to stop every single time to try to figure out that conflict. But once I realized, with the courage to be disliked, it's like, as long as the greater purpose or my vision or my drive or what I'm trying to work towards, as long as I'm extremely transparent and open about that, whether somebody chooses to follow me or not is their problem, not mine. And so I think that's what I'm getting at with overcomplicating. The idea or example of overcomplicating is, it's the idea of not worrying about what other people think of you, but it's taking action with a vision or the passion or the drive and sharing that concept, sharing that idea.
Yep.
And whether they buy in or not is not your problem, it's theirs.
Yeah. I want to read to you guys so I'm going to read to you what like one layer deep, the framework means, so that you can think through this process, right? So one layer deep is it's the step before execution. It's the intentional decision-making system that primes your action for maximum efficiency and sustainability, right? Is it sustainable? Can we do it? So the principle is, if it's not one layer deep, it's too complicated. It's too complex to sustain. And so why does this matter? Well, so we all know that buy back your time is huge. Dan, love Dan. But this is before that, because before you can buy back your time, you need to make sure you're not buying back inefficiencies. Just got off a coaching call this morning with someone who I had run through our time audit analysis, and he fired 2 VAs. He was like, oh my God, it was Libby, I was mortified. I said, I told you, when you do this, you're going to be mortified, because you could have someone at $7 an hour and you're like, oh my God, I got 3 remote people. But if they're inefficient and what they're doing is not like, what is the action before the result? Everything is so clear and transparent. That $7 an hour employee is 3 times inefficient. Like they're 3 times slower or less likely to implement and execute. So that cost you $21 an hour. So you're buying back inefficiencies if you have not created the simplicity in your business. The other reason it's important is because before you can optimize a system, you need to simplify them. You cannot optimize difficulty. You cannot optimize something that is got so many layers. It is so difficult.
And there was the this statement or the saying of, if you have a system that's broken, automating it.
Oh, you're just amplifying the broken. I would cuss if I could, but Facebook will shut me down. So like if you're automating, everybody's like, I want to go find something to automate, blah, 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 or like ClickUp or this or that, or like high level. And if you don't have a good system, you're just amplifying the crap that you have already. So like automation sometimes isn't the solution and sometimes it is. The other reason why this is important is before you delegate, you need to clarify on what should be delegated, right? What should I delegate? I just was talking to somebody the other day and they're like, I delegated something off, but it was what I like to do. And now I'm doing the part of the business that I hate, right? One layer deep. Like, what is the decision-making framework? What is the action before the result that we're looking for so that we can achieve it? And then before you can execute, you need to ensure the decision is primed for success. That just means like, what does success look like? You need to know, what is success look like? What is it? I found out something about myself this weekend and now I know about like why I have struggle. So anybody here ever have a really hard time envisioning what the future looks like? Like you can't close your eyes when you go to like places or you're like with coaches and mentors and they're like, oh, close your eyes and imagine what it would look like if you had $10 million. I can't do that. And I would walk through the process in my head, but I really struggled with this whole priming for success. What does good look like? Well, I found out this last week that I have the inability to imagine. It's called aphantasia. And so only 2% of the population has this. And it's like when you close your eyes and they ask you to see a red apple, like imagine a red apple, I see nothing when I close my eyes. It's always just black. I think of the red apple and I think in my head, well, the apple's red and it's round, but I don't see it. And so for a long time, I couldn't figure out like, why can't I envision the future? Why can't I see myself as a New York Times bestseller? I want it, I write it on paper, but I have a very hard time visualizing it. And I learned, well, that I have that, it's called aphantasia. You can look it up. And so there are other things that I have to do to ensure success, right? Prime the result. What is success look like? So I can envision it. So then I can't verbally explain it until I write it down. And so sometimes we delegate things that we don't even know what good looks like. We haven't even envisioned or explained to the person we're delegating it to what outcome are we looking for? Because maybe you can't see it, maybe you can't envision it, or maybe you don't even think you're worthy of success. That's a whole nother topic. But the principle of one layer deep, it applies to hiring, organizing your home, your life. It applies to relationships. It even applies to how you communicate with someone. I mean, have you communicated with someone that they make it so complicated and confusing versus like, what is the action before the result? Simple, like one step to get to the result. And so it is, my favorite one was, you cannot buy back your time without doing this because you're buying back inefficiencies, which is insane when you think about it. And that's probably why for the majority of people, when they go to outsource, like use nearshore and offshore people, it doesn't work. It's not the VA. It's not the person. It's you. It's how you communicate, or we've overcomplicated it. So I'm off that soapbox. I was trying to go back to the questions.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all about alignment, one layer deep, the communication, all of the above.
So it's a principle that I've applied, and it's coming out like with the book and the rebrand. And that's why I was like, the podcast is going to be deep. And someone says, is it always that deep? It's always that deep. Like in business, I mean, like how many processes can we buy? How many can we make? How many training systems can we buy? We can buy a ton. That's typically not what's keeping us stuck, guys. It's typically like self-work, communication, overcomplicating, lack of trust is what's keeping us stuck.
Yep. And I think that's something that with in creating the one layer deep, the book, the framework, the ideas around it, originally, I think it started as business focused or systems focused.
Well, yeah, because I'm a systems focused person.
Yeah.
Like if you guys could see the walls back here, they're plastered with paper with drawings. Because again, I've figured out why I draw. I can't imagine it. And it's like the wall is covered with like processes.
But every time we looked at a process, every time we looked at a system, and I think when you looked at it and you determined, is this system working or is it not? And if it wasn't, trying to figure out what that missing element was, I think what ended up happening is that we kept coming back to and circling back to the reason why the system isn't working is because either the discussion around it, the communication, or the transparency isn't there that ended up breaking the system. And so I know it sounds very lame, but every system fundamentally, whether it succeeds or not, is based on the level of communication that you deliver around it.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be either through paper, through automation, through you actually like talking through it or selling the idea. But fundamentally, systems will break without the right delivery of the information, without the right communication. And again, I think that's where fundamentally the one layer deep concept comes from. Is it all circles back to personal.
It is. And it's personal. And you keep working on like yourself and your mindset, and you learn to communicate much better. Like you learn to communicate what you're like, what do you want and how do you want it? And what's it supposed to look like? Before, I struggled. I was one of those, let me just do it myself because no one else can do it as good as me. But that's not true in business. We can't grow anything. We're just creating more and more friction. So I will say that, I'm super grateful to like the things that I've been put through and learned. And now I feel like I need to take Chris through those things. I've been able to pass it on through me but now it's like, okay, now you need to learn these things. But these are the things that we don't want to do. I say this all the time. Like last weekend when I was in San Diego and we were going through like BUDS training, and we were going through the guided meditation that was literally like an out of body experience meditation. For 3 hours, we were in a meditative, like probably 2 hours, we were in a meditative state. We were in there 3 hours altogether. The things that come to surface are the things you don't even want to think about. They're the things you don't want to address. They're the things you don't like about yourself. They're the things that happened to you in your past. They're the things that you judge yourself about. Until you work through those things, it's going to be really hard for you to achieve what you're actually able to achieve. Like we're all put on this world for a greater purpose, for a greater good, whatever that is. And it's different to everyone, and it has nothing to do with money. But until you work through these things, you're never going to achieve like true purpose. You're never going to have that fulfillment in life. And like when I was in San Diego, I worked through the exercise, and I told Chris, and he was great. I will say, I told Chris, I was like, oh my gosh, I have a spiritual crush on this guy. He's amazing. Chris is like, slow down now. Like
easy.
Not like a crush as in like, oh my gosh, he's just so motivational when he speaks. I had a work crush on Patrick Lencioni for the longest time. And it's the way they speak and deliver information. It's so transformational.
It's how connected he was to the words he was actually saying.
Mm-hmm.
So every word had intention.
Yes. And that's what we are trying to achieve. Every word that we share and we speak to our children. Man, for all of you moms out there, I see a lot of you on here. All this work, who cares about my business? Sorry to our business team. All of this work has made me an amazing parent. Like that alone, how to communicate, how to trust my kids, how to let them self-manage, how to get them the one layer deep information, how to hold nothing from them. And it changed the way I am a parent. I'm an amazing parent. And I have to say, with my older son, Billy, I was a horrible mother. As in, I wasn't abusive. I was a horrible mother, as in, I worked hard. I was short-tempered. I was young. I didn't even understand myself. And so that didn't make me a great mom. That just made me a very snippy mom. And looking back now, I'm like, and it's never too late to repair those relationships. Now I have a great relationship with my son, my 26-year-old, and he seeks to me for advice. He calls me. He's like, Mom. And then I'm like, I'm not trying to tell you what to do. He's like, no, please tell me. You've never been wrong. And I was like, what? Are we recording this call so I can use it against you later? But like, business aside, that's a perk. The real like thing that mattered is it changed the way I parent, and it changed the way I communicate with Chris.
Yeah. This is an exercise that I went through myself. One in my, what I'm going through, because we parent through phases. It's never black and white, good parent, bad parent. It's never that case. And we parent through phases. And the hard part about this is, let's just say you have a handful of kids, you have a few kids, and each one of them grows up in a different era or a different phase of you, a different version of you.
So all three of our kids are 10 years apart. So they had huge versions of me.
And it all depends on where you're at personally with yourself in that moment. And the way that I took this back and I carried it back was where I first felt it was with my own parents. And I want to say most prominently was my dad, because my mom, she was a Latin mother. So she was, again, her focus was purely on, are they alive? Are they fed? Do they have a house? That's it. She loved us to death. But again, traditional care there. But my dad, he had different versions of him that he worked through. We had 4 kids, so I had 3 brothers and sisters.
There were 4 siblings.
4 siblings. So with a pretty decent spread between all of us, probably spanning about 30, I'm sorry,
like you guys aren't
10 years. No. 10, so 10 years apart spread from biggest, oldest to youngest. But each one of us, even at 10 years, there was different versions of, I just want to say, my parents or my fathers and what they were going through. Started off, I think, and I say this sadly, like my brother got the worst of it. And my older sister, again, went through a different version, different phase. And she saw different conflicts. She saw different things growing up that I didn't get to see, but I saw through secondhand in how they grew up. And I started to trace this back in why they are how they are. My siblings, my
how did you trace it back?
So I went through the exercise. I actually sat down and I before I talked with my youngest sister, because I did that recently, I went up and I voiced every single thing that I had, full of transparency, and unloaded everything that I was feeling about how I grew up. Because again, my youngest sister, she was literally the parent to me, because I went through the very last version of my parents and my father in how he parented, which was purely on the spectrum of authoritative to more of a liberal, open, free. He kind of let us do as we please, but that's where my youngest sister was the one that was the pure parent to me, because she took the other spectrum of what he was lacking in that version of him. And so she ended up being the more authoritative, the authoritative version. She didn't know it. But what I went through is I went through the exercise of voicing it myself, sitting down with that person and unloading everything that I felt, and asked their perspectives in an open and honest way. I asked for their feedback. I did the same with my dad at one point, asking about my brother and sitting down and talking with my dad and say, I would, because my brother again was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. I think he got the worst version of my parents. Not that they were doing anything wrong, but again, it's just a different atmosphere, a different sense of how you parent. And that's the reason why I got a completely different spectrum.
With your parents, like what you were saying, your brother got the worst version. And with Tammy, your older son, and Tammy, I'm right there. My oldest son got the worst version of me. But one, I do all this, like we do all this self-work. I'm in a business group and it's all like self-work. And they had a speaker and he said something to me that like really changed the way I think about this. And it was that your parents only knew what they knew at the time they knew it. And typically they don't mean to do it to you on purpose, but you take it on purpose. But they only know what you know. And you have to separate the fact that they're a mom from a person, right? So they may be a better person now, but yes, they're your mom, but they're also a person, and typically morph them together, and they're 2 independent things. And so we can't be mad at, our mom or our dad for something, but now you see them and they're this person over here. That's who they were in that time. And they only knew what they knew. And for like with my older son, I only knew what I knew. And I was in a miserable place in my life, which then came out through how I parented. And your dad was the same way, like in a miserable time in his life.
And what I came to terms with myself, there's some ways that you can help to kind of, I guess, remove that guilt or that shame if you have any. But the way that I reasoned with it with myself, after really working on myself and understanding people with my father and the way that he parented in his version for me, is that I understood that there's that version, and I could learn through what he didn't share with me, what he didn't give with me is like the mistakes and stuff. Like I learned through that, through his mistakes. And what I found with applying this to the kids, because I have different versions of myself, even with Billy and Austin and Yaya, the way that I can cope with it and the way that I feel, oh my gosh, Yaya's going crazy. The way that I can come to terms with it myself is that I talk about it. I'm open about it.
Yeah. She goes, "What if you were parented by a parent like this?" And so, how do you deal with that? So, if you're on the receiving end of different phases of parents, like let's just put my parents and we'll talk. Josie's on here. She's actually my cousin. So, she knows my parents very well. My parents are, my dad is like completely different person than when I was a child. Like my dad was the hardest working, most straight laced, strictest, probably meanest person you could ever meet in your life. And then you see him today and you're like, who is this person? Like, who are you? And the way he treats my daughter, I was like, I don't even know who you are. Plus, this is not fair because you treated me much different. It wasn't mean or bad. He was so strict, but I'm like, who are you? And so, and then going back to my son, the one way I've dealt with being parented in a certain way with my parents is like Chris said, I talked to my mom. Like I told her that I wasn't, I was unhappy with certain things or struggle with certain things. But it's opening up and having those conversations, whether they care or not. I have to say it and I have to share it. I don't care. I don't want them to respond. I don't need them to respond. I don't need them to agree. I just have to communicate it so I can then release it. I can release anything I had. And I did this with my 26-year-old. And when I got to this point and realizing that, oh my God, I was not a great parent when he was little, I had to confront him. I had to say, and I had to tell him, and I had to apologize. And I had to say, I realize this now, like I wasn't the greatest parent. I was always there. I took too good a care of him, but I also I enabled him to be certain things. But I had to apologize, and whether he accepted my apology or not, I also told him that I needed to talk about my past with his dad, and did I have his blessing with that? Because I couldn't get through that past unless I talked about it. And I mean, I'm in all this kind of weird. I mean, like when I did that breathing exercise last weekend, I told the guy, I said, "How can you love and hate somebody at the same time?" He goes, "Those are really strong words." I said, "I know. I'm jacked up. I'm messed up in my head because I have this sense of grief or burden that I have to like fix what I did with parenting little Bill. Then also like little Bill and Austin's dad has passed away. And then I have like, I should glorify him because he passed away. But then there was a time in our life that was emotionally horrible for me. And like, how do you make all that work without like hurting anybody's feelings?
Yeah.
And then I had to realize that all I had to do is like with my kids is ask them for, communicate with them, share open, hey, you didn't get the best version of me. I'm sorry, but guess what? I'm here now. I'm here now and we can work on that together.
And it's not simply acknowledging or apologizing. You know, this is with everything, but I use the example of having a deck of cards and you have to lay out all the cards on the table and you cannot care which ones they choose to pick up. But at least you've laid the cards out on the table and they're there so that they can be the ones to pick it up themselves. This goes in with how you explain and how you confront the idea of if you messed up in vivid detail in specific cases, understanding or explaining that you understand that I messed up over here, and over here. And that's when you can start the process of recovery or asking for forgiveness. But if you, again, with the idea of one layer deep with transparency, if you have a general or a vague assumptive apology, it will not get you anywhere until you lay those cards out on the table. Again, letting them when they are at a point in their life where they can pick up those cards, they will pick them up.
Yeah.
But you have to put them down.
And I think when Chris is saying putting them down, that's when I say like I had to share my feelings. I had to share what I was going through. I didn't really care if they were ready to receive it or if they wanted to receive it. I just needed to put it down so I could take that off of me. I could stop holding that inside, because one of the things I just figured out like this week is I hold a tremendous amount of grief over like the death of my ex. And I'm like, I don't understand why it's so heavy, so hard. Like that whole, how can you love and hate somebody? And we talked about like how, and I feel like with the kids and his mom, And then there's poor Chris here watching me deal with all this. And I finally figured it out. And I put those cards down now. And I'm like, oh, I'm free. And the grief comes from not him, not the death, not even the issues we had or the like abuse that went on, because I've worked through that. It's mainly because he had his own demons that he was working through as well. I don't think he was a bad person. I think that he struggled emotionally and supplemented it with alcohol. But the grief, I realized, comes from everyone around me in my, like, over the years saying like, oh my God, you were his one and only. Oh my gosh, he would still be alive if you stayed together. Like, oh, if you, like, you were his everything, you were this, you were that. Like, and I'm like, oh my God, that is a lot of like grief to carry. And then I told Chris, I said, I've figured out why I felt like he had a piece of me, right? And this is not parenting. This is just, how do you put the cards out on the table? And it wasn't true. It was actually like friends and family that were keeping me grounded, that because of what they were saying to me. It wasn't fair that they were saying these things to me, but they were saying them to me. And it was like, it's like it hooked me to that event or that time in my life, and I couldn't let go of it. And so one of the great things that I learned is there's hooks and cords, right? Can someone hook into you? And as you're trying to climb this mountain in life or in business, you're pulling all that with you, right? Or there's cords, like there's a cord, there's the connection here. And you need to cut that cord. And so until you put the cards on the table, you're going to always have those hooks and cords. This comes from Dr. Kevin Preston. You're going to have those hooks and cords. And that's why everything feels so hard or heavy, is because they're hooked into you or you're dragging them along. And then once you put everything on the table, whether it's your parents or your kids or your marriage, it's always going to feel so heavy and hard until you take those hooks out and you cut those cords.
Yeah. And so I'll say this is I had to do the reverse with my dad because there were no cards on the table. He never placed them down.
Smartest man I've ever met in my life, by the way.
Yeah.
Greatest person.
But again, there were no cards on the table. He never placed them down, meaning that he wasn't fully understanding or open with himself, not with me, because he did a great job of caring for me, but with himself. And this is where all of the problems fell back. And so what I had to do is I had to construct those cards myself, which took a lot of deep work for myself to understand. Is that when I sat down with my dad, he had already been diagnosed, had stage 4 cancer. Probably at that time when I first spoke with him, because I sat down and had this exercise, he probably at that point was about 3 months from his death day. And so 3 months prior, I wrote out these notes. I intentionally flew out to him and I met with him and I spoke with him. And it was the idea of me. I constructed these cards specific to the way and the ideals that I saw in him, and especially the version of him that I received in my childhood, either whether it was lacking or it wasn't. But I told him, and I said in my message, is that I want him to be okay with the idea of passing, because I know and I can feel it and I sensed it, that there was a lot of insecurity, a lot of grief, a lot of shame that he had in himself, not in any way with anybody else. But again, I could tell that he didn't lay the cards out with himself in his final months. And so I had to tell him, and I said, and again, this is to Tammy's point in the reverse, is that I had to construct my own cards because he was not able to do it for himself. And so I told him, I said, I wanted to let him know that in everything that he's screwed up in life, in every way that he's failed as a parent, is that I recognize that, and that I told him that I appreciate for messing up, because I was able to learn through that and to grow through that and understand what I don't want or what I shouldn't do in life in terms of what was not there. And so I had to make those cards for him and give him that sense of security, that psychological safety, because he was not able to do that for himself.
What do you do if you're parented by somebody like we're saying we were not the greatest parents? Is you do what Chris did. Like, if they're not willing to put the cards down, you have to do it for yourself. And you did it with your other sister too.
Yes.
You know, because for the longest time, poor Chris, he would always tell me, I was like, oh, I had a great childhood. I'm like, I don't know, because I mean, my childhood was fun. I'm not going to lie. I had a great childhood. I didn't have a great 20s. Like, the 20s were not that great for me. But I said, no, is emotionally distant and closed off as you are, like, there's something that you're not dealing with. And I, like, that's all I would tell him. And he's like, oh, but I was great. And I'm like, you keep telling yourself that because you believe it, but I don't know. Like there's something I could feel it, and I didn't ask because the second you asked Chris something, he would just close off, like just shut down. And I'm like, okay, like, and I was working through things because I'm not really working on things with my parents. Mine more came from, even though, like I said, my dad was strict and this and that, like, he was always around, and he's just a whole different person than he used to be. But mine was working through my time as in my 20s. And so I'm working through that and I'm learning about myself. And then I see this in Chris and I could feel it. And I'm like, I don't know, but you're lying to yourself. Like I could feel him not being honest with himself. And you've done a lot of work with intentionally going, if they're not ready and they're not there yet, but I am. So you could do this with your kids, with your siblings, with your spouse. If they're not ready yet, you can't wait for them to be ready.
Nor can you ask for them to pick up the cards.
No, because you're not looking for a response. You don't want them to even say anything. Just let me put the cards down and
step away.
Like
with gratitude.
Yeah, which was it's difficult to do because it's confrontational. It's the hard things that we don't want to do. It's going deeper, but sometimes it's hard to do that because you don't. This is something I practice all the time now. I'll ask him a question and I'll tell him I'm not looking for a response. I just need to say this out loud, and he'll think he needs to answer me. But it's kind of like, no, I don't need an answer. I don't need a response. I just need to say this so I get it out. And I'm not carrying that question, that burden, that stress, or that worry. Typically, when we interact with people, we think we need a response. We think we need to like have a conversation or an argument or collaborate over it. But sometimes, guys, there's a lot of power in silence, like just putting the cards down, saying, please don't say anything yet. Just take it in. And when you're ready, let me know, and leave it in silence. So I had to go through therapy, and every adult should go through therapy, by the way, because it's a neutral third party. None of us are perfect enough that we don't need to talk about something. I was in therapy. This was years ago. What was this, like 12 or 15 years ago? No, 12 years ago. And the psychologist told me something, and like that changed. A light bulb went off in my head, and he's like, relationships are like rocks, right? If you have too big of ones or too many in your pocket, they're going to drown you. And I was like, oh my God. And then it made me like just look around. And in that instant, I actually broke a few relationships that were not healthy. They were actually very destructive relationships. And that phrase never left my mind. And it reminds me of the title of that book. And it's so true. For anyone who's listening, it's never too late to put the cards down. But when you put the cards down, you can't blame and you can't point fingers. It's about how you feel. It's not about casting blame or hate or negativity. It's about how I feel about this. And here's one thing that we have to remember, and I did this, is that we rewrite our past. Like we rewrite our past memories. At one time, I literally forgot, because I made myself forget, because I rewrote my past, how horrible a certain time in my life was when I was going through like that mentally and emotional abuse. I rewrote my past in my own head. And you have to ask yourself, like, I don't know if you were rewriting your past in your own head or not. Like, am I, and we rewrite it. And there's not necessarily, it's not bad or good, because you could rewrite it to help get over something. But by getting over something, you have to work through it. You can't just like skip it. And then I hear other people talk about like the past, and I might have been there, and I'm like, I don't know what version they were living in because I don't remember it that way. And I'm like, who rewrote the past, me or them? And you kind of ask yourself, sometimes we need to rewrite that past just to get through life, like just to get through the day. But then we have to come back to work through it, what was real. Because if we don't, let's just say, like, I feel like that emotional abuse can cause depression. And if we just go and take a pill for it and like take a Xanax or something else, we're just pushing it further and further down, and we're not addressing the past, we're just pushing it down. And that's where, like, to me, disease and things kind of spawn off inside your body. It's one, we all rewrite it. It's normal, but we can't rewrite it to not address it. Yeah, we can't rewrite it so that we won't, because we don't want to face it. Or, I rewrote mine because it was, I'll be honest, it was like pure shame. of how could I have gotten myself into this situation. It didn't start that way, but it sure the heck didn't end very well. And it was almost like a sense of shame. Like, I can't believe I let this go this far. I mean, I was so like miserable or not myself that I never went home. I never went back to my hometown probably for like 15 years. 15 years from the time I left to the time, because I was so miserable. I was so ashamed of what had happened or I'd let my life get into. They're like, how could she let this happen to her? She's supposed to be strong and she's supposed to be this and she's supposed to have it all together. And I never went back. And I just kept pushing it further and further down. But then I found that like I wasn't going to get anywhere in life. I was going to continue to be a horrible parent if I didn't like address it. And this can come from anywhere. And I think everyone's like, oh, well, what if nothing that bad? I think Chris
I fell into that.
So here's what don't fall into. Oh, there's a time in my 20s where, like I said, it wasn't great. I was physically and emotionally abused. My ex was an alcoholic. You know, it's kind of like it was fun when we first got together. Like you're 17, 18. I knew him since I was a kid. And you drink and you have a drink and you go out and like, oh, it's a day off. Let's have a drink. And it's this and it's that. And you're like, oh my gosh, I had to grow up because I had my oldest and he continued to be 17 or 18. And their brain freezes in that time of where the addiction starts. And Chris thought that because his past wasn't as traumatic as mine, that he didn't have anything to work through because he was comparing his like past to my past. And I think sometimes we get ourselves in that like, well, I wasn't abused, or, oh, I wasn't this. Oh, I had an okay childhood. But don't compare like your trauma to someone else's trauma. Everybody's trauma is different. And it could have just been like a sentence a teacher said to you that you like totally ruined your like self-esteem. Yeah. Everyone's trauma is different. So don't compare yours saying, oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Like it was okay. We all have things to work through to get to the next level. That's mastery, right?
And when you're talking about recalling memories, and freedom comes from the reframe. When you talk about recalling memories and taking in the information, I think the thing that comes from not reframing it or not getting past it all comes from acceptance with yourself and how you decide to bridge that connection between the past and yourself. And that's where I think that I was intentionally blocking off that bridge, is because in recalling memories and when the topic came up, I kept saying that it wasn't that bad. It was fine. It was normal, or not really taking in the full experience in those memories in my past. I intentionally cut off the section of me that was like with the acceptance of who I am and what actually happened. And so I was only recalling a half truth. And so I think with everybody, it's in order to recall these memories the right way, the truest way is like Libby said, is not to compare your traumas to somebody else's, but it's to recall it when it's the time for you to be open with yourself. So in order for that to happen, you have to be transparent with yourself and then go through the exercise of recalling these in a way that will really pull out every detail, invoke it. What I did with my youngest sister recently is the truest form of that. Is I went and I wrote down, I'm talking about pages of notes, and I sat down with full focus, walked and talked through every single thing, and I asked and I clarified without interruption. I needed to walk through every single piece of my past. Now that I was ready to understand and accept who I am and what was the reasons behind it, I then recalled every single piece of my past, every single piece of memory that I could, to connect it with reality, because I was cutting off that memory. There was half truth, a half recollection of that was keeping me stuck, and I couldn't get past it. I couldn't be transparent about it. I was stuck until I went through that exercise and I was fully open with myself and made that connection 100%.
Yeah. I was the reframe. So there's a part of me that, let's go back to the grief you hold, the stress you have, the rocks in your pockets. I am so happy with where I'm at right now. I'm so proud of who I am right now. And we worked through this exercise, and, Chris nailed it on the head when he said it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. Is that I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change my past. I wouldn't change what happened to me. I wouldn't change anything. But by me being proud of who I am and my past, also means that like I'm okay with the death of my ex. And that is the thing that I couldn't say out loud. It's not that I wish, like, it's not that, it's just that by saying I'm proud and I wouldn't take anything back and I wouldn't change it. Yes, it sucked at times, also means that I accept it. And so for me, like for the kids, that like, how do I accept it? Like, how do I be okay? Like that isn't the right mind frame to be in. And then like for his mom who struggles so much with it, I'm like, how do I tell her I'm okay with it? I'm like, and it's like one of those weird things that like I have to reframing it and saying, but by you saying that, you just said that you're okay with that. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. And I'm like, it's almost shameful to say I'm okay with it.
But again, it's because it's a matter of what cards you're willing to put on the table,
and so
and not expecting someone to pick them up.
And I have to put those on the table. And so I recently put those on the table. And again, it's not blame, it's not negative, it's not gloating over it, it's just here's how I feel. And by me being proud of my past and moving forward and moving through it, saying I wouldn't change it. And it's really powerful to think about like going back and you say, oh, I have regrets and I changed this and I changed that, but that isn't who you are today. And so it's like accepting it and being okay with that happening almost makes you feel bad, but you can't feel bad if you want to move through it. And for me, that was like a very wow moment of, you're right. I am okay with it and I've been okay with it, but the world won't let me be okay with it because of certain things going on or certain people that I keep around. Like I can't get rid of my 2 kids. Like, and there's a burden that comes with it. Yeah. I reframed it, and power comes in that reframe, and how I'm like, oh my gosh, you're right. But I won't be proud of it and I can't move through it until I say that out loud. So this was a great talk, man. We went from business and processes and systems and 1 layer deep to totally like self-work, and that 1 layer deep going into transparency. And that's how we got to this conversation of how being transparent transforms not our business, but even our personal life. And how it got to here was, I said, all this self-work helped my business, but the thing that helped the most was my relationship with my kids, and probably my parents too, now that I say that, because I have a great relationship with my parents. And that's worth all of the time and money I could have ever spent in doing this work. I do post these up on a podcast network. So if you guys want to catch other episodes or the recordings while you're exercising or driving, the link is in the description where you can catch some of our other episodes.
Right.